I want to begin today with a question for you, a rhetorical question. I don't need any shout-outs here this morning, unless you're really, really moved by the Spirit. What are you doing here? What are you doing here today? That's what I want to ask. What are we doing here today? Now, I've been thinking about this question. Why are we here? I don't mean here on the earth, or why do we exist? I mean, what are we doing here in downtown Cleveland on a Sunday morning? I mean, isn't downtown Cleveland supposed to be this really awful place? At least if you talk to a lot of Clevelanders who abandoned it long, long ago. I talked to one gentleman last Christmas who I met at a kind of social gathering, and he's a retired police officer, and I told him I lived in downtown Cleveland. He said, "Are you kidding me? Downtown Cleveland's the armpit of the region." What are we doing here in the armpit of the region? Never mind that things are growing in downtown Cleveland. Do you know downtown Cleveland, its resident population has been growing steadily every year since 1996. The current downtown population, people who live in downtown Cleveland, currently sits at somewhere between 12 to 14,000 citizens live in the armpit of Cleveland. Never mind that some of the best restaurants anywhere in the country are in downtown Cleveland. Never mind that, hey, the Browns won last week. And if you're so inclined toward the ice, as you know I am, the Lake Erie Monsters, first home game this year, they beat the Syracuse Crunch 3-2. The winning goal in the final 3 minutes, how exciting, 12,500 people gathered at the queue to cheer on the Monsters, Lake Erie Monsters. I say, power up the Lem. There are a lot of great things going on in downtown Cleveland. Theater district's going great. There's a new East Bank Flats project coming in. There's all sorts of wonderful things happening in Cleveland. And yet when I talk to Clevelanders, since I've been in Cleveland the last couple of years, they don't think so. They can't understand what I'm doing in downtown Cleveland. And in fact, a lot of people, when I tell them I'm the senior pastor of the Old Stone Church, they'll say, "Oh, is that still a church? Isn't that a museum?" Yeah, ouch, indeed, a museum. A museum's what you create once a movement has ended, which kind of scares me because we started this beautiful museum down on the lake called the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Has the rock and roll movement ended? Perhaps. But we are certainly not a museum. But here's the question. What are we doing here today? Why did you come to the heart of the city to worship today? I know many of you pass by dozens of suburban churches, perfectly fine suburban churches that you could be worshiping in today. But you've come here. Some of you, I know, may be here because this is an incredible space. An incredible, sacred space in which to worship. My goodness, we are surrounded by museum-quality stained glass art pieces. Some of them hand-signed by Louis Comfort Tiffany. You can see the signatures. Though that's not a bad thing to worship in that kind of space. These are the expressions of our faith, are they not? They tell the story of our faith, do they not? Some of you are here because you like to listen to one of the best church choirs in the city of Cleveland. Pardon me, one of the best choirs, period, in the city of Cleveland. Oh, look at the heads. They're getting a little big. I'm sorry, I shouldn't do that. But there's nothing wrong with wanting to worship in a sacred space with beautiful sacred music, a place whose roots go 190 years deep into the soil of this city. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a wonderful thing. I remember serving a church in Nashville, Tennessee a number of years ago, and it's kind of interesting because I was at Vanderbilt University working on my doctoral degree in preaching. And some of the people in the congregation I was serving at the time said to me, "Pastor Mark, don't take this the wrong way, but you're a pretty good preacher, but we're really here for the music." One of my dearest friends in the congregation was a concert pianist. We didn't have an organist. We didn't have much of an organ. He played the piano, and he was incredible. He was very good. There's nothing wrong with that. My ego could take that. So if music draws you, or the art pieces draw you, or the history draws you, that's not a bad start. Some of you I know are here because I've talked to you over the last couple of years about why you're at Old Stone. Some of you are here because some of those suburban churches, as fine as they are just a little too monolithic in their congregational demographic. Gosh, that's a pretty wordy way of saying people all look the same, they all dress the same in some of those congregations. We like coming to Old Stone because there's a diversity of people at Old Stone. People don't all have the same skin color. They don't all dress the same way at Old Stone. They don't all have the same accent at Old Stone. Some of them, when they say, "I'm going outside," say, "I'm going outside." There is a diversity here that's rich, and that's a wonderful thing. Some of you are here, I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to say this. You're here because you know city churches normally have big-headed, big-mouthed, high-pulpit preachers. Some of you are here because you like the way the word is spoken from the heart of the city. You know that the preachers in city churches tend to get themselves immersed in city leadership, or they're writing in the Plain Dealer, and they're always willing to open their mouth at any invitation. And for some strange reason, people like that sort of thing. It's a good thing for me. It keeps me working. Right? If there were no role for preachers, well, I'd be out of work. All of a sudden, you guys are thinking to yourselves, hey, maybe we need to rethink this whole ministry gig for Giuliano here. But look, those are all reasons those reasons that draw us here are things the church does for us. Getting to know you as I have, I think you're here not simply because of what the church does for you, but what the church allows you to do for God and for this city. I think Old Stone has a rather unique geographical position in this city. It has a rather unique historical relationship with the city, and it has a rather rich and profound commitment to the city in ministry and in mission. And a lot of people come here because they feel it gives them access and opportunity to serve God by reaching out to the city in a variety of ways. It gives you a chance, in a way, to live out the words of the prophet Jeremiah, who said, "Work for the welfare of the city." Actually, let me correct that a little bit. That was Jeremiah speaking, but who was Jeremiah speaking for? Who was speaking through Jeremiah? Who was Jeremiah a mouthpiece, a voice for? But God. Being here in the heart of the city, participating in the life and the mission of the Old Stone Church allows us to participate in God's call to serve the city, to work for the welfare of the city, for in the city's welfare we find our own welfare, right? A lot of us are here because it allows us to participate in some award-winning mission opportunities. A lot of us are here because we like the fact that Old Stone Church hosts a school for single mothers and a daycare for their children 4 days a week, because we know that one of the best ways of eradicating poverty in our city is through education. And so Old Stone is a place where that can happen. And Old Stone is a place where we can participate in that kind of leadership. Some are here because it's an opportunity to take part in other kinds of mission, whether it's a food program or a meal program, or whether it's going out to other areas of the city through the mission works of the Old Stone Church. Old Stone isn't just a place where we get to receive, it's a place where we get to give. And in giving, it's a place where we get to live and participate in the ministry of God, to which we've been called as far back as the prophet Jeremiah, who said, "Work for the welfare of the city, for in the city's welfare you will find your own." But you have to admit, sometimes sometimes we get discouraged in that mission, don't we? Sometimes the weight of these hard and heavy times in which we live weigh down upon us, and we find ourselves more and more challenged to participate in that ministry. We get discouraged in what we do. You know, we hear Jesus say, "You will always have the poor with you." And we say, "No kidding, Jesus. We live in Cleveland." "No kidding, Jesus. We live and work in downtown Cleveland. We worship in Cleveland. We understand we will always have the poor with us." And the more and more they keep coming to us and we keep going to them, and we don't see the radical kind of change we hope for, the radical kind of change that the kingdom of God envisioned for us, we get discouraged. Even your preacher gets discouraged every now and then. Do you know, Friday afternoon, we had just finished up a funeral here for Thaddeus Kane. And it was a very busy, stressful week. It was a very heavy and sad time. Those of you who knew Thaddeus know that he was only 57 years young. And that was a very difficult time for his family. In my mind, I felt like I was kind of carrying a lot of that for these good people. And I knew that Saturday I had a wedding coming up. And Sunday I was getting ready for services. And I didn't have a sermon ready yet. And I knew that Sunday after worship we were going to do a memorial service for Miyoko Frost. And I just feel like the weight's coming down on me. And as soon as the funeral was over for Thaddeus on Friday afternoon, the family had been led into the gallery for a time of fellowship and friendship. And I noticed standing at the desk, at the front desk where Barb, our reception and administrative person, works, there were two people, street kind of folks, hovering over her desk. There was a gentleman and then a shorter woman, and they seemed to be kind of piling up on poor Barb, who's sitting there at her desk trying to resolve this issue in the midst of this funeral. And so I went over to attend to the situation. And I said, "Can I help you?" And this man who's sort of puffed up and says, "I need something to eat. I need something now." And I said, "Well, our food service program was this morning. We gave out a lot of food this morning." He said, "Well, I'm hungry now." I said, "Well, settle down, sir. We're in the middle of a funeral right now." He turns and he looks at the family who had just gone in to the gallery for their reception. And then he looks back at me and says, "I don't know anything about any funeral. I just know I want food." Now, I know enough about HALT. Do you know HALT? Hungry, angry, lonely, tired. If you're any one of those four things or a combination of two or more, you need to halt. You need to get yourself out of the situation. I was hungry. It was 3 in the afternoon. I hadn't eaten since my oatmeal at 7:30 in the morning. I wasn't feeling lonely, but I was starting to feel a little angry because here's this guy demanding that we take care of him, thinking of us as some sort of welfare office, and I was definitely tired. Been a busy week, it'd been a heavy day, I knew there was more coming. And while I say I knew enough about HALT, I turned and I walked away and thought I'll go see what I can scrounge out of the cupboard to give this guy and this woman just to get them out of my hair, get them out of our building. And as I turned to walk away from him to go find him some food, I hear the man say, "You need to let Jesus take care of the dead. Leroy needs food now." Well, the little switch inside of your preacher just got flipped. It was an embarrassing moment for me, but I'd had enough. And I turned around and I came back and I said, "Are you preaching to me?" I said, "You come into the Old Stone Church and start preaching to the preacher? You're talking to the wrong person, sir. This is not the day to be preaching to me." And all of a sudden he starts backing down. "I'm sorry, I just need food. I just need food." I said, "I was on my way to get you food, and you start preaching to the preacher? Give me a break," I said. I'm sorry. So I walked off, and I got Reverend June. I said, "Will you get this guy some food just to get him out of here?" You know, sometimes the work we do can be discouraging. It can weigh heavily on us until the switch is flipped and we snap, or we find ourselves not being the hardy people of faith we feel God wants us to be.